Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of Sometimes All It Takes to See Is to Look. This will be part 2, chapter 2, entitled That Makes a Lot of Sense, actually. Curse My Fair Judgment Protocols. Shouta was once again in the teacher's lounge, staring down at the two files on the table before him. He stopped by Nezu's office following the curious conversation he had with Midoriya before lunch to pick up the file he had requested. While he was there, he decided to get Bakugo's as well. It seemed like they were connected in some way, having been apparent childhood friends. Shouta pinched the bridge of his nose. All of this was giving him a serious headache. He sighed deeply before grabbing Bakugo's file first. Opening up the folder provided him with a picture of the smirking blonde and a list of general information below it: age, height, quirk, etc., which Shouta skimmed over before stopping at his middle school records. Aldera Middle School in Musutafu. Bakugo had perfect grades, all A's, which did not really surprise Shouta. Bakugo was smart, smarter than one would think based on his attitude, but he is very determined, and if he put his mind to something, he would absolutely do it. And what he wants to be is the best. So it's no surprise here. What did surprise Shouta, however, is the teacher's remarks in the records. Helpful and kind were not words Shouta would describe Bakugo with. He was brash, rude, and didn't seem to have any semblance of volume control. So unless he had a personality shift within the last year, Shouta found it very hard to believe his old teachers were being completely truthful. Not to say that they didn't personally think Bakugo was kind and helpful, but maybe their view of kind and helpful was skewed. Shouta flipped open Midoriya's file next. He was greeted by a picture of the nervously smiling Greenette. Shouta glanced through the general information again, when something caught his eye. Quirk, superpower. Note, quirkless until age 14. What? Quirkless until 14. Midoriya was quirkless until he was 14. And that explained a lot, actually. Now Midoriya's reaction to Ida in class today made more sense. Shouta knew how people were treated with weak or villainous quirks, how he was treated that way as a kid, even up until he was a pro. But he knew from statistics that the quirkless had it much worse. Rates of child abuse and abandonment, mental illness like anxiety and depression, bullying, discrimination, and gods, the suicide rate. Of the quirkless population, nearly 60% commit suicide before the age of 18. The other 40% had a 50% chance of making it to age 30 without falling victim to suicide or hate crime. 20% of people in the world are quirkless, but given Japan's fast embrace of quirks when they first appeared, the quirkless rate is much, much lower, closer to 1%, most of which are from the older generations. Being a quirkless kid now, in this day and age, Midoriya was probably the only quirkless kid in his school. Shouta's head is spinning. The implications that Midoriya was quirkless until he was 14, momentarily ignoring the fact that he's had his quirk for less than a year and no one thought to tell him. His reactions make much more sense now. He was probably bullied in middle school, badly, if his habits now are anything to go off of. The flinching when someone moves too quickly meant that some of it was likely physical. Not to get started on the mental problems being bullied can cause. No wonder Midoriya dissolves into a stuttering mess at the slightest encouragement, and hunches over like he's about to cry at any harsh word, a resigned look in his eyes. Shouta kicks himself for not noticing sooner. If he just read the file sooner, maybe he could have helped sooner. Shouta knows that he has no proof of any bullying, or worse, but he will think about that more when he feels less like he's about to punch someone or cry or both. So he can't do anything now. And it's a Friday, so he'll have to wait until Monday to talk to his problem child. Shouta runs yet another hand over his eyes. This is a lot. He glanced back at the file, seeing the same Aldera Middle School as on Bakugo's record. Speaking of, what is their connection? Bakugo is a very powerful quirk. Midoriya didn't until he was 14. The flinches, the quirk apprehension test from the first day makes so much more sense now. But does that mean that Bakugo was Midoriya's bully? Shouta hopes he's wrong, because while Bakugo is generally harsh and loud, he seems to actually care about his classmates in his own angry way. Then again, he did nearly kill Midoriya in that battle simulation the first week. Shouta shakes his head. He's getting off focus. He turns back to Midoriya's middle school report. His eyes widen slightly as he scans the information. Almost all B's with a few C's, which in itself is confusing, since Midoriya is one of the top students in class. But that's not the most strange thing here. The teacher's comments are just, what the hell? A disruption in class, frequently picks fights with students, and distracts others. Shouta blinks. Are they really talking about Midoriya? His quiet, nervous, overly humble problem child? A disruption. It's like Bakugo and Midoriya's notes were switched. Midoriya has enough marks on his record to be expelled from UA, by Shota's account. If Shouta had seen this record before he met the kid, he might have even expelled him before he'd started school. Almost like his teachers were trying to actively prevent him from getting into a good high school. Shouta grits his teeth and stands abruptly, gripping Midoriya's file in clenched knuckles. He storms out of the lounge, bumping into Nemuri on his way out. "Whoa, Shouta, what's wrong? You look like you're planning someone's murder," she joked as Shouta speeds past her, an arguably so, murderous scowl on his face. "I am," he growls back, leaving a slightly shocked Nemuri behind as he makes his way to Nezu's office. Without knocking, Shouta swings the door open, seeing Nezu at his desk with 2 cups of tea already prepared in front of him. "Oh dear," Nezu starts as Shouta sits hastily in front of the bear mouse thing, grabbing the teacup closest to him and downs it in one gulp. "What's gotten you so worked up?" Nezu asks, probably already knowing the answer, given he knew Shouta was coming. "I need an appointment with Aldera's principal, as soon as possible," Shouta merely answers. "Very well," Nezu nods before typing on his computer. "Would this evening at 3 work?" Shouta grunts in agreement. "Done!" Nezu exclaims a bit gleefully, probably excited about the prospect of taking down another school district. "Now," Nezu begins, elbows resting on the table, with paws clasped in front of him, a slight grin on his maw. "Why do you need to meet with this middle school principal?" Shouta takes a short breath and gives Nezu a quick version of what he just found out. By the end of it, Nezu's signature grin has dimmed slightly, and there's a furrow on his brow. Shouta knows Nezu is no fan of humans in general, given his past, but he also knows that Nezu is sensitive to others' abuse. Which is what bullying is, abuse by one's peers. "I can see why you want to meet with him. This is very concerning indeed." Shouta nods. "I was thinking, if I can get the security footage from last year, it would help me figure out what's going on." Nezu's smile widens slightly at that. "Of course. If they won't freely give it to you, please tell them that I will be in contact next." Shouta shudders slightly. Nezu can be terrifying. He's almost sorry for any school that does wrong by him. Almost. "Feel free to leave when your students' heroic class begins. If that's all." Nezu gestures his paw towards the door. "I have some emails to prepare." Nezu gives Shouta his signature feral grin, which Shouta matches to a T. Standing, he thanks Nezu and leaves. Shouta has about an hour before he needs to head to Aldera, so he starts walking back to the teacher's lounge, hoping to catch Hizashi to ask if he noticed anything during his class. He was about halfway there when he noticed Midoriya, waving to his friends, before turning around and lightly jogging back the other way. Shouta sees a familiar head of purple hair down the hall in the direction Midoriya was going. Shinso Hitoshi, who, ever since the sports festival, Shouta has taken to training because cursed the UA entrance exam for being biased to physical quirks. Shouta will never admit it out loud, but he sees some of himself in Shinso, the insomniac who got ridiculed as a kid for having a villainous quirk. Children really are cruel, so when his problem child walks up to his protege, talking a mile a minute, Shouta can't help but observe the interaction. He's far enough down the hall that he can't hear them over the sounds, and can only see Midoriya's face, not Shinso's, who has his back to Shouta. He observes Midoriya say something animatedly to Shinso, waving his arms in front of him, with a smile on his face and a gleam in his eye. Shinso crosses his arms the moment Midoriya stops talking, and apparently says something back, to which Midoriya's face falls a little. He says something back with a weak smile that doesn't quite reach his eyes, and a tiny wave. Shinso turns his back to Midoriya, and Shouta can see the boy roll his eyes in a huff of annoyance while walking away. Midoriya stares after Shinso for a moment, before turning back towards his classroom and briskly walking away, discreetly swiping at his eyes. Shota's brows furrow in confusion and concern. What was up with that interaction? What bugged Shinso so much for him to walk off in a huff, and what made Midoriya cry? Shouta knows his problem child is overly emotional, but he never really has been ashamed of his crying. But just now, it looked like he was trying to hide it. What got him so upset over a minute-long conversation? Shouta needs to have a talk with Shinso before he goes to Aldera. God, he has to talk to a lot of people today. Shouta caught up with Shinso before he went into Class 1C. "Shinso," Shouta drawled. "A word?" Shinso turned to look at him, with a flat gaze that reminded Shouta a bit too much of himself. Sure, Aizawa-sensei. Shinso drawled right back. Shouta rolled his eyes, this kid and his attitude. Shouta cut right to the chase. What do you think of Midoriya? Shouta watched as Shinso's face pinched in annoyance. Well, he's the perfect little hero course student, with that powerful quirk of his. I'm surprised he's still pretending to be nice to me after figuring out my quirk. Shinso scoffed. He was just asking me a bunch of weird questions about my quirk, but I know he's just going to use it against me if I answered, so I told him no. Shouta pursed his lips. Okay, so here's another student with issues that needs to be sorted. Shouta really couldn't blame him for thinking this way, though. He's a product of the society they live in. Shinso only told him a little of what went on before UA because of his quirk, but it seems like he was majorly ignored. People talked about him behind his back, sure, but no one would speak directly to him, even the teachers. What exactly did you say to him? Shouta asked plainly. If it made Midoriya cry, then it must have had some emotional significance to his past treatment. Shinso looked confused, but answered regardless. I said, cut the crap, you don't have to pretend to care. Run along to your little hero friends with your perfect little quirk. Shinso cringed a little. Okay, that sounds a little harsh now, but I was really frustrated. It's not like he actually wants to be my friend. He's probably just going to use whatever I told him to turn everyone against me or something. Shouta pinched the bridge of his nose with a sigh. Shinso, you can't judge others without knowing their true intentions. That's just what other people did to you. I know for a fact that Midoriya was sincere in his curiosity about your quirk. It's just something he has a passion about. He's also probably one of the friendliest kids in my class. I doubt he was going to use anything against you. Shinso looked a little guilty, but still seemed annoyed. Maybe. But that still doesn't mean he's not looking down on me. What? With his incredible quirk and all those friends, what's he need me for? Shouta took a deep breath. Listen, Shinso. This is not really something I should be telling you, but I think it's important for you to know so that you can understand. Shinso blinked, pursing his lips slightly and furrowing his brows in confusion. Midoriya was functionally quirkless until last year. Shinso's eyes widened. He knew as well as Shouta how bad the quirkless were treated in this society, being the only ones who had it worse than those like them, the weak or villainous quirked. So what I said to him, Shinso trailed off, looking guilty. Yeah, it made him cry, Shinso. Shinso's head snapped up. I didn't mean to make him feel bad, I just thought... Shinso put his head in his hands and groaned. I'm just as bad as them. He sighed dejectedly. Shouta put a hand on Shinso's shoulder. I did not tell you this to make you feel bad or anything like that. I just want you to know for in the future that you cannot know anyone's past and you cannot judge them for what you don't know. Quirks don't define you. You know that as well as me, and that includes powerful quirks. Just because someone has a strong physical quirk does not mean their life is perfect, okay? Discrimination goes both ways. He moves his hand up to ruffle his hair lightly. I know you didn't mean anything by it. Just be careful in the future. Shinso peeked up through his fingers. Should I apologize? Shouta nodded, taking his hand away. Eventually. Give me some time to talk to him first. Shinso frowned and looked at the ground. Don't worry, kid. He'll definitely forgive you. I swear I've never met anyone so forgiving. Shinso nodded. Get to class now, and don't bring up what I told you. It's not really a secret, but it seems kind of personal. Shinso nodded again before heading into class. Thanks, Aizawa-sensei. He called over his shoulder before going inside his classroom. Shouta pulled out his phone to look at the time. He has about 30 minutes before he needs to head to Aldera. Hopefully he can still catch Hizashi in the teacher's lounge. Shouta turns and continues on towards his initial destination. Shouta finally arrives at the teacher's lounge. When he walks in, thankfully Hizashi is there along with Nomuri. They both are sat on one of the couches talking animatedly. Hizashi looks up when Shouta approaches them. Shouta! He yells with his quirk, to which Shouta activates his own while muttering under his breath about volume control. Nomuri here tells me you're going to commit murder. Need any help? Shouta sighs and flops down on the couch next to Hizashi, shutting his quirk off. Maybe. Depends on what I find out. All I have right now are theories. Hizashi raises an eyebrow. Is this about your little listener? Shouta nods in affirmation. Nomuri tilts her head to the side. Are you talking about Midoriya? Hizashi bobs his head, aggressively. Me and Sho have noticed some rather concerning behaviors from him. That's why I asked you earlier to keep an eye on him today, so... Hizashi leans forward. Notice anything? Nomuri pursed her lips and put her hand to her chin in thought. Not specifically. I mean, there have been little things the green bean's done since the start of the year, but I just chalked it up to nerves. Shota's eyebrows quirked up. First of all, green bean? Second, what exactly have you seen? Namuri smiled foxily. You have your nicknames, I have mine, she shrugged. But just the general jumpiness and the stuttering, which is kind of cute, but always seemed to get worse when he was talking to me versus his classmates. I just thought he was overwhelmed by my beauty. Shota scowled. Namuri, he's a minor. She swatted playfully at the air between them. I know, just saying. Hizashi leaned back in his seat. I've noticed that too. How he chilled out with skittishness around his classmates, but not around his teachers. Shota's scowl deepened, and he slouched into the cushions. That makes sense. I read the kid's file. You should have seen what some teachers wrote about him. Both Hizashi and Namuri turned to face him, with concern evident on their faces. What did they say? Namuri asked softly. Shota leans his head back, pulling an arm up to rest over his eyes. A disruption. Picks fights with classmates. Shota trails off, mentally slapping himself. And I just got onto him today, for something Bakugo started. No wonder he was nervous. Shota sighs before continuing. He had enough black marks to be barred from most high schools. If I had read the file before I met him, I would have expelled him. Honestly, I'm not sure how he was able to get in, not to mention his subpar grades. Shota drags his arm down his face, turning to look at his friends. Both had blatant anger and confusion on their features. But, Namuri began, he's so sweet. I couldn't see him pick a fight with anyone. Yeah, Hizashi replied. He's like super smart, too. What gives? Shota shrugged, sitting up a little. I don't really know, but turns out he got his quirk when he was 14. Namuri and Hizashi both shot up in their seats, eyes wide. What? Are you kidding? Shota shakes his head. Namuri was like him, with a non-physical quirk that wouldn't work against robots like the stupid, biased UA entrance exam had. And Hizashi, although his quirk is powerful, he had a lot of trouble controlling it when he was younger, and often got made fun of for it. Or wasn't allowed to talk in his classes. They both understood quirk discrimination from personal experience. I'm planning to go meet with this middle school principal in... Shota checks the time on his phone. About 5 minutes. He pockets the device, standing up from the couch and stretching his back. If what you've told me about him being specifically nervous around teachers is any indication, I plan to sick Nezu on the school once I get what I need. Namuri and Hizashi both nodded their heads. Give him hell. Yeah, do it for the little listener. Shota smiles a little at their encouragement before waving goodbye. He walks out the door and heads to his car, ready to do just that. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 2 of Sometimes All It Takes to See Is to Look. Chapter 3 will be up next. I hope you all are still enjoying this one, and as always, thank you so much for listening.